Hi, I'm Dr. Avanti Kumar Singh. In over 20 years of practicing both Western medicine and Eastern healing traditions, the most important thing that I've learned is that healing is a journey we take together. So on this podcast, I'll be demystifying Ayurveda and other integrated medicine, showing how these simple, ancient practices are the keys to unlocking a healthy modern life. We are all healing catalysts because healing starts within. It starts with you, and it starts right now. This is a Soulfire production. Episode number 79. Well, hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to the Healing Catalyst podcast. I'm so happy that all of you are here. And if you're new to the podcast, welcome. I'm Avanti, and I'm thrilled to have you. I am so excited today because we're introducing a new series on the podcast called Go Deeper. Now, this was based on so many messages that I and my team have gotten and emails from all of you, our amazing community of listeners, asking for more Ayurveda and yoga knowledge for us to really go deeper on a specific topic so that you can learn and understand more about these healing modalities. And so I thought, well, maybe I should start talking to other Ayurvedic practitioners, other experts in Ayurveda for these Go Deeper episodes, many of whom I consider to be my own mentors and teachers. So I am so excited because some of the Ayurvedic experts that I have lined up for this series are absolutely amazing. And you are just going to enjoy this series so much. And so to kick off this Go Deeper series, Chef Divya Alter is back with me again to talk about immunity from an Ayurvedic perspective. You know, Divya was first on the podcast back in December. And if you haven't heard that episode already, please go back and listen. It's about digestion and it's linked in the show notes for you. In addition, before I introduce Divya to all of you again, I want to make sure that you know that if you want to learn from Divya after you listen to this episode, which I think you probably will, she has a new masterclass series on Ayurvedic cooking, which features over 8 hours of guided video instruction, interactive workbooks, and study guides. This is the most beautiful masterclass series I have seen on Ayurveda. It's amazing. And it is really the ultimate companion for cooks of all levels, from beginners to experienced home chefs who really want to learn the foundational skills and concepts and recipes of Ayurvedic cooking. And as a member of the Healing Catalyst podcast community, you get the entire series for 40% off. Use the link in the show notes for that. So let's dive into our first Go Deeper episode to explore immunity from an Ayurvedic perspective with my guest, Chef Divya Alter. Divya is the pioneering chef and author who's bringing Ayurvedic cooking to the modern world. She has nearly 30 years of experience studying, practicing, and teaching Indian spiritual philosophy, yoga, Sanskrit, chanting, and vegetarian cooking throughout Europe, India, and the United States. Originally from Bulgaria, she has studied and taught Sanskrit in Sweden and in India, and has assisted in the translation of many ancient texts. But that's not all. She's so accomplished. In addition, Divya is the author of 2 groundbreaking cookbooks, What to Eat for How You Feel, which is hands down my absolute favorite Ayurveda cookbook, and her new book, The Joy of Balance. She's also the chef restaurateur of Divya's Kitchen, an award-winning Ayurvedic restaurant in New York City, and also the creator of a line of Ayurvedic pantry goods. Divya has introduced the wisdom of Ayurveda to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. But her greatest passion is teaching, and you're really going to hear that in this episode. Over the last 13 years, she's worked with more than 20,000 students, and she's the founder of North America's first Ayurvedic nutrition and culinary training program, which I'm actually taking right now and absolutely loving. In our conversation, we talk about what immunity is from an Ayurvedic perspective, what weakens immunity, and what strengthens it. Divya shares some routines, foods, and yoga practices that help to support immune function. And make sure that you stay until the end of the episode because Divya also shares some spices, teas, and food combining tips to kindle the digestive fire and boost immunity. I am so honored to have Chef Divya Alter back again on the podcast to go deeper, to talk about immunity from an Ayurvedic perspective. Well, hello, Divya. It is so wonderful to be back with you again. Happy New Year, by the way.
Thank you for having me, Avanti. Happy New Year to you and everyone who is listening.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you back again. We did our first episode together just last month, and the amount of feedback and positive response that I got from my podcast community was so overwhelming that I had to invite you back even sooner than we had even thought about, because everybody was so interested in what you had to say, and so much of your wisdom they found so incredibly helpful. So thank you so much for doing this again with me. I'm thrilled to have you back. And today we're going to dive into the topic of immunity, this idea of how to support and strengthen your immunity, what we can do in our everyday lives. You're going to give us some tips. We'll talk through some different ideas that are really some very practical takeaways for the listeners so that they can really start implementing some of these ideas right away. So it's not just so esoteric. So I think we'll just get started. Yes? Does that sound
Yeah,
good?
thank you. And I have to admit, for somebody like me, I've had an autoimmune disease for several years, and I was able to completely cure myself from it with the Ayurvedic practices. So for somebody who's been down the low immunity road for years, I'm very happy to share different principles that have worked for me and I've seen work for many people.
Well, that's amazing. Well, maybe you can start. Let's start with that. So tell us a little bit about how you began to heal yourself with Ayurveda and why Ayurveda. I mean, we've talked about your story of how you found Ayurveda, but specifically, whatever you'd like to share, I think that would be a helpful frame. And then we can dive into more about immunity specifically.
Yes, sure. What was it, like about 15 years ago? I started to feel really sick. Like I was so tired all the time. I had chronic fatigue, chronic digestive issues. It turned out I had the initial stages of fibromyalgia, which is an autoimmune response. And, um, and I was just so miserable, lots of pain, inflammation. I could hardly do anything with no motivation. Like I was in the down period of my life. And and I was looking for answers. Why is this happening? What's the deep cause, right? In Ayurveda, we don't just look at the symptoms and manage the symptoms. We always look for the deep cause of the problem or causes. It's more than one. And I started an Ayurvedic treatment, and it helped a little bit, but I wasn't getting much better. And somehow I always, I like to pray, and somehow in response to my prayers, I learned about holistic dentistry, and it turned out that the deep cause for my autoimmune response was two infected root canal teeth that were completely asymptomatic. And they were infected for a long time because when we extracted them, they had they had black roots, cysts. I mean, they had all the symptoms of infection, but I didn't have symptoms in my mouth. So there was no pain, no swelling. You could hardly see anything on the x-ray. And we found out about them with a bioresonance device that kind of scans your body and reads the frequencies in your cells. And this therapist kept telling me, you have these you have severe tooth infections, you have to look into this. And then when we did the scans, we did like CT scans, then the infection showed very clearly. So that was my and once we extracted those uh, infected teeth, then somehow my immune system rebooted itself. I didn't have to fight anymore, and it didn't have to fight itself anymore. And then the Ayurvedic treatment really started working for me, and started just my whole body. I'm much healthier now at the age of 50 than I was 15 years ago when I had the autoimmune. Yeah, so sometimes I tell people, you try everything because it can be so frustrating. You're not feeling well, you have immune deficiency, and 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 you don't know what's causing it. You try everything, and I always tell people, check your teeth like really thoroughly. Especially if you have root canals, because they tend to get infected over time.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and I think it's an important point, that we many times forget that our mouth is connected to our digestive tract. And we know that our digestive tract is connected to every system in the body. And so, the newer research that we're finding, well, we've known this in Ayurveda for so many thousands of years, that the digestion, the digestive fire is the seat of health. And so when you start looking at those connections and seeing, is your digestive fire, is your digestion working correctly? Is the microbiome balanced? Then you can start seeing the connections to where the inflammation is coming from, where the problems might be. And so I think really thinking about your mouth, dentistry, and more than just getting your teeth cleaned, which is very important, but actually looking to see if there's something, like you said, that is going undiagnosed is really, really important. Again, we forget that our mouth is connected to the digestive tract sometimes, and that the food that we're taking in really affects the inside of that tract, right? And the
Yeah,
microbiome,
yeah, and I mean, there's friendly bacteria in the mouth,
right?
right? And there's friendly bacteria in the large intestine. So when one of the reasons for lowering our immunity is when we we have depleted friendly bacteria anywhere anywhere where it's supposed to be, because they kind of like, the friendly bacteria are like the first line of defense.
Exactly.
I remember Dr. Teitelbaum. She's one of my Ayurvedic doctors. You know her very well from our training. Dr. Teitelbaum always speaks about, um, she always looks at her patients restoring the friendly bacteria, because she would say the best way to get rid of candida overgrowth, for example, would be not just to do a candida cleanse, but to actually restore your friendly bacteria, because they're the soldiers that will take care of the bad guys, so to say. So yeah, so one big reason, very much related to the gut, big reason for low immunity is depletion of friendly bacteria.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important point is that, we are very focused in Western medicine about removing the bad stuff. Not that there's anything wrong, but the opposite perspective can also be very, very helpful to look at is that can you crowd out the bad stuff with the good stuff? And that goes for food, bacteria, any of these different things, right? Even habits as we're,
Yeah.
starting off the new year, rather than focusing so much on, what's not going well or getting rid of bad habits or whatever it is, let's focus on adding good stuff. And over time, it crowds out the bad stuff. So I think that's really interesting you said that because I think it's an important point for people to think about.
Yeah, it's the positive approach, Avanti. I really appreciate you mentioning this, because yes, you're focusing on the positive. That's what I tell people also when they try to eat healthier. I would say, just focus on eating wholesome foods. If you eat fresh, wholesome foods, then naturally you will be avoiding some of those ultra processed, unhealthy foods. So it always comes with a higher taste, so to say. So when you incorporate the better options, then naturally you don't want to go into the less good options.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, so let's focus back on immunity. I mean, these are all important concepts for immunity, but let's talk about, what is immunity from an Ayurvedic perspective? Because I always think it's important first of all to frame, you know, Ayurveda has a little bit of a perspective change, a perspective shift on concepts, and it's important to keep that in mind. You can't always go in thinking about these terms from a Western perspective. There's got to be a little bit of shift of how you think about it. So, from your perspective, what is the Ayurvedic perspective of immunity?
Well, I mean, immunity is our defense system, right? But the immune system is very flexible. A healthy immune system is flexible. It's not always in high gear, fighting, fighting, fighting. It's like a healthy immune system knows when to go up, when to go down in intensity, in order to properly respond to an immune event. So we don't want to be always in high gear, because it means that the immune system is fighting something. So when we're in good health, we're immune system is there protecting us, but it's not on high alert, so to say. So the immune system in Ayurveda explains that the immune system, the final product of is very much related to digestion, as you've been mentioning. And the final product of digestion is called ojas in Ayurveda. That's the culmination. So when you eat good food and you digest it, it becomes assimilated, absorbed in your different, it nourishes all the tissues in our body. It energizes us. The food fully becomes part of our tissues. Then the final product is called ojas, and that is, it's often, there is no one word that can translate ojas from Sanskrit. It's often translated as vitality, because good quality ojas gives you good vitality. Ojas, when somebody has good ojas, they have this glow, they naturally glowing. They have good energy, good stamina, they don't get sick. But where is the ojas coming from? So if you backtrack the production of ojas, it always starts with Agni. So Agni, Agni, Agni is a Sanskrit word for fire, but it's not just fire. It's like, I like what the way Dr. Baswati Bhattacharya would translate it. She would say fire in the sense that which engulfs and transforms. So the Agni that governs all the metabolic processes in our body, not just the digestion of food and our life experiences, but the transformations in the blood, the transformations in the fat, the transformations in the bone, all the transformations that happen in the body. So the different in the liver, there's so many different types of 13 different types of Agni. So when Agni goes low, when it's too low, then um, our burners are kind of low. And Agni is, I love Agni because it's not just, Agni in the sense is the first line of defense, because it's not just digesting food. Agni also tackles pathogens, viruses, and all kinds of pathogens, that also pollutants, environmental pollution is engulfed by Agni. So when our Agni is low, then we're more susceptible to invasions, so to say. And then the other thing that happens when Agni is low is then the mucous membranes in the gut can become, they're the barriers, then the natural, not just in the gut, in the lungs, in the skin, in the brain, they're the natural barriers, right? So they can become too dry. And also the intestinal lining, if Agni is too low, the intestinal lining, the villi, it can kind of get covered with a sludge. I want to see this under microscope, Avanti, because
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
really interesting, right?
it, and so that sludge is called ama in Sanskrit. There's a word for it in Ayurveda, but that sludge is what kind of covers the intestinal lining, so we don't absorb nutrients so well. And this also leads to depletion of immune system. So it all starts with Agni. And Agni is our ability to digest, to transform, to metabolize everything in our body.
Right. Right. And so when you have a malfunctioning or imbalanced Agni, or an Agni that is low, too variable, even too high, it can cause problems, right? We want to have a healthy, I often describe it as, if you look at a stove, it's sort of that nice medium burn that cooks everything, cooks the food at a nice pace. When you have too low of a fire on a stove, it takes very long and it takes forever for things to cook, and it doesn't cook very well, or doesn't cook completely. But if the opposite is also true, if you have too high of a flame, you burn things,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same with our Agni, our digestive fire, that you want to have that nice, healthy flame, which then contributes to a healthy immunity. And I think another point I want to click into that you mentioned is that in Western medicine, we often talk about, okay, how do you strengthen and boost? Even the way I introduced this, this episode about strengthening and boosting and supporting your immunity, it's a very Western frame. And I have to check myself also, because it's not about just, allowing your immunity to go, to be so strong that it gets out of control, because that causes issues also. We know that in Western medicine. It's a healthy immunity. And I think it goes back to this idea, that Ayurvedic perspective of balance, right? We need a balanced immune system. We need a balanced digestive fire. Too much, too little, never good. In Western philosophy, Western perspective, more is always better.
Yeah.
And that is just not true. So I think that's a really important point to click into. So we're going for a healthy immunity, a healthy digestive fire.
Yeah. And again, it all boils down to what we eat, how we eat it, how we digest it. And this very much links also into our lifestyle habits, because our lifestyle can affect digestion
Right.
as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
like it
And
or not, it all boils down to food.
it does. It always does. And I think that food also, and we'll get into this, food is also, we can expand the definition of food, right? I
Hmm.
mean, we're talking about physical food that we eat through our mouth, but there's other food also. Everything in life is food. And so that's
Yeah.
another perspective, an Ayurvedic perspective to think about. I want to go back again to this idea of immunity. You talked about ojas, this sort of vitality that is the end product of digestion once the food nourishes all 7 layers of the tissues, right? And so when you have this fine vitality, this ojas, you have good immunity, you have good strength, you have good health and vitality. There's another concept of Bala, or strength, in Ayurveda, which also is related to immunity. Can we talk about that a little bit too?
Yes, Bala is physical strength. Manobala is mental strength.
Hmm.
I look at strength as, again, as a byproduct of transformation.
Right.
So as a byproduct of Agni. So the opposite of strength is weakness. So again, when Agni is very low, it creates like a spiral of weakening events that can lead to diminished strength. And strength also is increased by the vision I'm getting right now is exercise, but it exercise, not just physical exercise, but also having a strong mind, because a weak mind, believe it or not, can create weakness on the physical level as well. So weak mind in the sense of negative thoughts, like harboring these negative low emotions. It's kind of they eat us from the inside. Yeah.
Hmm.
We're keeping the grudge, we didn't forgive, we're keeping that terror inside, we're not talking about it, we're not letting it out. So this can lead to mental and emotional weakness. Also, that can manifest over the years as physical problems, but and that can definitely impair our immune system and immune response as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Because I think, again, sometimes these terms are divided up: strength, immunity, right? All of these different things, but they are very related. And so if you do have this weakness in physical, mental, emotional, down the line, it can be a contributor to low immunity or to unhealthy or weakened immunity. And I think, again, many times we don't think about those connections, right? We're so busy looking at the physical food that we're eating, or looking for the causes, the viruses, the toxins causing the weakened immunity or the foreign invaders, right? The foreign invaders can be coming from our mind, right? And we'll get into this a little bit when we're talking about, what strengthens and supports immunity. But I think this is a really important point again to think about.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I mean, I know for myself, and I think we've all experienced that. When I feel depressed or I'm
Mhm.
grieving,
Mhm.
this is when I'm particularly susceptible to colds and flu and just feeling down, right?
Yes.
It definitely weakens the immune system. So you have to also understand, is it, why am I feeling that way? That way. Sometimes it can be a chemical reaction. You're depleted of vitamin D, which actually is very much
Right.
part of healthy immune system, good levels of vitamin D. Or or maybe sometimes it's just depletion of nutrients can lead to that. Or sometimes it's just our inability to deal with a mental or emotional challenge. Um, but the thing is that when I feel like that, I always kind of tell myself, and I look for the friend who can give me a little kick to get out of this condition,
Yes.
remind me that this is not my natural condition, right? My natural condition is to be healthy and happy. That's the natural human condition. So when I'm in a depleted state, I usually I usually look for the lessons. Like, what are the lessons here? What did I do wrong? Why is this happening? So I don't just simmer in my depression, so to say. I use it as a stepping point to get out of it much stronger.
Right. It's that awareness, that conscious awareness of asking yourself. And I actually just did an episode on this in December, the last episode of the year, in which I was reflecting on some things that have happened for me last year. And this idea of awareness, this conscious awareness that Ayurveda asks us to live with on a daily basis, of noticing, of saying to ourselves, I have this feeling of depression or this feeling of weakness, whatever it is, whatever symptom it is we're feeling, however subtle or obvious, and asking ourselves, where is it coming from? What could be contributing to it? Right? Because that awareness is where health starts, right? Because we start to notice the connections between our entire life and what we're feeling in our physical body, in our mind, in our emotions, in our spirit. We have those connections, which is what I think that Western medicine misses, is that we're not always looking at all of the things that are happening in our lives that are affecting our health. We're looking at the symptoms rather than looking at the root cause, which is what you started the episode with, talking about looking for the root cause of your immunity issues that you were having.
Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe the root cause of the imbalances in your whole life.
Correct.
And I love this approach, Avanti, because when you go from the point of awareness, then you also own it, right? So, and when you own it, you take responsibility to change it.
Yes. Yes, you're not helpless. You're taking that healing power back into your own hands. You have all of these people who can guide you. You and me talking on this podcast, we're guides for everybody listening. But ultimately it's up to them to take control, right? And then look for the guides. Look for the physicians, the therapists, the chefs, whoever
Yeah.
it is who can help them on their healing journey.
Yeah. I call them the healing team.
Yes. Yes, I love that. Your healing team. You create a healing team, but ultimately you are
You have to do the work. Yeah.
exactly. You're the person who has to do the work. So, okay. So, we've kind of touched on this immunity idea, the perspective from Ayurveda. Let's talk about a little more specifically. So, what do you think are the main things that weaken immunity from an Ayurvedic perspective? We talked about a couple, but let's go back through it so that we can have sort of an organized way of thinking about it.
I mean, the general, if you want to put it all under one umbrella, really, when I think about it, is because we disconnect ourselves from nature, from
Hmm.
our own nature and from nature around us. and just think for a moment how disconnected we are. I mean, I live in an apartment above ground, so many feet above ground, lots of in a city that's full of noise and air pollution, water pollution, so many people. There concrete everywhere. I rarely walk barefoot on the ground. The apartment and the whole building is surrounded by Wi-Fi devices, by electric and electronic devices, 5G towers around. I see them. Um, so there is so much outside influence that disconnect us from nature. And then how we disconnect ourselves internally from our nature, of who we are and what we're meant to do in this world. So all this disconnection leads to weakness in our system on every level, also weak mind, weak body, weak immune system. And I was thinking yesterday, it's like that's what Ayurveda is about, is to help us reestablish our connection with nature. And when you look at, so like we discussed in our culinary training, right, in class, we were talking about the order of things. So shower first, eat after, don't eat and then shower. So it's not just a rule. It's like, this is how the body works. This is how nature works. When you shower first and eat after, you're in flow in harmony with nature. When you do it the other way, you're going against nature.
Right. Right. Yeah. So that disharmony with with the rhythms of nature is so important for supporting our immunity, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
really, again, being in concert. And I love how you said, also this disconnection from our own inner nature, which I think is such a beautiful way of saying it, because it's not just what's outside of you, although we are so disconnected with the rhythms of nature. Like you said, lights that can be on 24 hours a day. And so we're staying up, until all hours of the night because we can, even though nature is sleeping, right? Or sleeping late into the day. Those are simple things. Or
Yeah.
walking
Air
on
conditioning. Yeah.
yeah, or walking on a belt, right? Instead of walking outside, we're walking on an electrical machine, or stair stepping on an
Yes.
electrical machine, right? These are just small examples of, how the modern world, modern technology was supposed to help us, but it's actually harmed us because it's created this greater disconnection from nature, because we have all these technological advances. Now, of course, I'm not saying technology is bad. It's the reason you and I can do this podcast episode, you sitting in New York and me sitting in Chicago.
Yeah.
But again, it's about balance, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's one thing, is disharmony with nature outside of us and our inner nature. That's one thing that weakens immunity. Another thing that we talked about was the digestive fire,
Hmm.
right? And the role of Agni and how important that is. What are some other factors, do you think, that really weaken immunity?
Well, you mentioned the body rhythms and nature's rhythms. So this connects to sleep, right? So lack of sleep, bad sleep, lack of deep sleep. So there's so many scientific studies about linking the lack of sleep, proper sleep, to weakened immune system. And it makes so much sense. I mean, we all know how we feel when we didn't get a good night's sleep. And it's not just we're cranky, our brain doesn't work properly. So when you do this regularly, once in a while the body can handle, right? But when we regularly go to bed late, we don't sleep enough, um, our sleep is impaired in different ways, then we really feel very weak, and we're much more susceptible to disease. And so that's also related to melatonin. There are even more recent studies like the melatonin deficiency, which the body naturally produces during sleep. That's also linked to impaired immune system.
Right. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, this goes back to what we call the Ayurvedic clock, right? And the different
Mhm.
energies that are present at different times. And so, the nighttime period from about 10 p.m. to about 2 a.m. if you miss that period of sleep, that is another time for pitta, which is fire and water, those energies. And what happens is if you're awake, your brain thinks that that means that you should be eating food, when in essence, what it's trying to do at that time is to transform everything that has come in through all five of your senses in the daytime, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And if that does not get processed and transformed and metabolized and digested during that nighttime, because you're awake and you're putting more in instead of allowing everything to be processed, you have more of that sludge that builds up, that toxic load, the ama, right? So this is all connected, because if we have more ama, that means our digestive fire can't work properly. We
Yeah.
can't extract the nutrients. We don't nourish the seven tissues. We don't end up with ojas, which is vitality and immunity. So it all connects.
Yeah.
And
You
so
can't separate them.
you can't. So it goes beyond this idea of, sleep and how important sleep is for us to function. But it's also, we miss that transformation period for cleanup, for digestion,
Mhm.
metabolism, all of those things that happen during night, which then increases toxic load where our body can't handle it. And then we start having symptoms. So again, it's all connected.
Yep. Well, so you mentioned also elimination, like those toxins that we also ideally will eliminate in the morning, right? So
Right.
poor elimination also depletes immunity, unhealthy bowel functions. Poor elimination can also deplete friendly bacteria, interestingly enough. So, but what's good? I just want to define good elimination, like proper healthy bowel function, because
Yes, please.
because sometimes, like, I talk to clients sometimes, and like, so you're regular, and they say, oh yeah, I'm regular. I poop every third day.
Yeah.
I poop once a week, and I'm like, what?
Hmm.
So, so a healthy bowel function occurs at least once a day. If you eat three substantial meals a day, then a healthy bowel function will be twice a day, morning and evening. Again, depends on how much food you eat. But and the ideal time to have your bowel movement is in the morning, like first thing around by 7 o'clock. And I have to admit, for years I had very irregular bowel function, and it was one of the biggest problems for me because it wouldn't come in the morning, and then I would shower and get ready, and then it will come in the worst time during the day and cause this inner anxiety, and then unhealthy bowel function also kind of recycles toxins. So I would get pimples, I would feel like really stuck up, like kind of sluggish, and almost like I would get this stiffness and almost like a muscle aches, but it's not exactly muscle aches, but it's kind of stiffness because I didn't eliminate on time. So it may take an effort if you're experiencing something like that. It will take a conscious effort from you to regulate your bowel function so that you can regularly eliminate every morning. And Ayurveda gives different tips of how to do that. But make sure that you have regular bowel movement at least every morning and maybe in the evening as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Again, all connected, right? And so, this idea of elimination is so important for healthy function of the body. Um, Again, for that exact reason, because of elimination of toxins and what your body doesn't need. If you keep holding what your body doesn't need, it leads to more toxic load, leads to more symptoms, illness, disease.
It really struck me what you said. You're so wise. I just love talking to you.
I'm talking to
So
you,
when you
you're
said
wise.
keep keep holding something that your body doesn't need, and
Yeah.
this struck me also because we have the tendency also to keep holding emotions and mental patterns that we don't need.
Mm-hmm.
So looking also at what we're eliminating, but also what we're holding, because that's part of the self awareness, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that idea of thinking about what are you holding not even holding on to, but what are you holding? What are you holding in your mind? What are you holding
Mm.
in your heart? What are you holding in your body? We hold so many emotions throughout our body. And are there any connections between, oh, I woke up with a headache this morning. I woke up with a pain in my knee. I woke up with low back pain. What emotions am I holding? I know for myself, many times when I have an issue with back pain, I've had chronic back spasms since I was in my medical training.
Mm.
I know that when I am extremely stressed, when I'm holding a lot of stress and anxiety and worry, it shows up in my back. And so as
Mhm.
soon as my back starts to hurt, I have the awareness, okay, you need to think about what are you holding? What are you carrying? And start to release some of that and find some ways to release that. Or you are going to have a back spasm and you're going to be in bed for 3 or 4 days, right? I know this. And so I think, again, that's really important is what you're feeling because you're holding something. It's always so interesting, I think, in Ayurveda to look at both sides of the coin because it's not just about elimination, but it's also what are you holding? Like,
Yeah.
I love that we can look at it from both sides because you can get so much awareness and information by looking at things in those dual ways, those dual perspectives. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. Okay, so let's move to. We've talked about what weakens immunity. What strengthens and supports immunity? I think this is really where people I know are waiting to hear sort of what can they start to do to help to strengthen their immunity. And we're going to kind of free flow with this, but we're going to do it just a little bit organized so people can follow. We're going to use the frame of the optimal health pyramid, which, many of you who listen to this podcast know this frame from my work, which is that pyramid with the base being routines, because that is the basis of everything in Ayurveda. What we do every day matters. Then looking at the middle area of the pyramid, which is diet, which goes more beyond food, which we've already sort of talked a little bit about. And then at the top of the pyramid is the tools of yoga. And so we're going to sort of try and frame it that way so everyone can follow a little bit better and you can be taking notes. I know a lot of you will be. So let's start with routines that can help to strengthen and support immunity. What are some of your favorites, some of the ones that you really find really helpful, Divya?
Mm. What weakens immunity can also strengthen immunity, right?
Correct.
If it's done in
Yes.
the right way.
Hmm.
So, so definitely sleep. So pay attention to your sleep patterns. But yes, going to bed by 10 o'clock is ideal. But also, do you wake up a lot during the night? Are you able to fall asleep? Um, it's interesting because a lot of sleep problems are related to digestion. So if you go to bed and you have high acidity, you will wake up again. Like that acid stomach will wake you up. Or if you go to bed really hungry, like you're very hungry and you go to bed, actually you probably won't be able to fall asleep if you're very hungry. So look at how your sleep patterns relate to your eating patterns and also your mental patterns. So are you able to quiet down your mind before you go to sleep and kind of let go of the day's experience and go into a quiet place where you can fall asleep? So look at your sleep patterns because good sleep relates also to good sleep helps increase our vitamin D. It helps with detox, as you mentioned. It also helps with, I mean, with so many things. So
Right.
sleep is so important.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And, for the listeners, I did do an episode on sleep. We'll make sure that we link it in the show notes. But, I always say that sleep starts the night before, obviously, but it actually starts more importantly in the morning, right? You're actually getting ready and preparing yourself from sleep from the habits that you start from the very, in the morning when you wake up. That's when you're really preparing to have a good night of sleep. So it's not just what you do in the evening, although that's important, but it's what do you do starting in the morning from the types of foods that you're having, how late are you having caffeine, when are you eating your meals, right? As you mentioned, how late are you eating dinner? What kinds of foods are you eating at dinner, right? Do you have habits which allow you to downshift and regulate your nervous system throughout the day so that in the evening you're not so revved up and have so much on your mind that you can't go to sleep? So there's a full episode on this, but I think that's what you're touching on is look at the connections between any sleep issues that you may be having and what you're doing during the daytime because they are connected very, very much. So I think that that's a really important thing. What are some other specific practices in the morning that you would suggest that could help with immunity?
I mean, there's so many things that I like to do in the morning. I don't always have the time to do them. But for example, doing a self massage with oil. It's called abhyanga in Ayurveda. So this is applying, massaging. They're usually like herbal oils, depending on your body type, depending on the season, depending on your condition. Different types of herbal oils that you can do a self massage. And I usually leave the oil for like at least 20 minutes, and then I shower. So that really helps because so when we spoke about dryness of the membranes, right? So the body naturally gets drier with as we age. So usually after the age of 60, when the vata season really hits us, and we start getting wrinkles and our body starts to dry up. So to counteract this, like the oil massage really helps with slowing down aging, and especially when it's a sesame oil based, or not coconut oil, but it has to be something with sesame oil with ghee, because these oils, they penetrate all, they can bring herbs and they can bring moisture all the way to the bones. And so this kind of oil massage, it can be very, very helpful for strengthening immunity. And also in general, you just feel so good. I always feel good when I do it. Or and there are a lot of YouTube videos on how to do abhyanga or Ayurvedic self massage, or if you can go to a professional massage also. Um, and then so that's one thing, but we don't always have the time to do it in the morning, especially if you have children. You're trying to make breakfast, get them ready for school. I mean, there's so much going on in the morning, right? You want to meditate, you want to exercise, but try to do it as much as you can. Just put it on your radar. It's very helpful.
That's a beautiful practice. Yes, definitely. It's one that I think is so incredibly nourishing, and there's a lot of other information about why it nourishes the tissues and how it leads to, more vitality and immunity, which we don't have time to get into, but it is a very nourishing practice for many different issues, including immunity. So it's a great one. And, honestly, if you can't do it in the morning, because I know, again, for people who work, who have a busy lifestyle in this modern world that we live in, doing it in the morning can become very challenging. So do the next best thing. Do it in the evening. If that's when you can do it then. It's okay.
Yep. Yeah, that can work too.
And you can sleep with the oil if you can. If you're okay with that, that's a great thing to do. Or you can just put it on, do the 20 minutes, and then do like a quick shower and then go to bed. It can be very nourishing.
Yeah, Vitamin Show always told me to always wash off the oil,
Yes,
because the oil also pulls toxins
this is true.
that come to the surface of the skin. So it's good to wash all that off.
Okay.
But there's certain things you can leave on, but maybe not on the whole body. Like you can leave oil on your feet, for example.
Yes.
That will actually help you fall asleep,
Yes, that will.
like sesame oil, but maybe not on the whole body. And then, I mean, another simple morning practice is scraping your tongue after you brush your teeth, um, because there is a lot of this sludge that accumulates on the tongue from during the night cleansing of organs. And this will reduce your bad breath and all that, but it will also clear your tongue, and it will also reduce the acidity in your mouth that will protect the friendly bacteria in your mouth to be there.
Right.
Because too much acidity in the saliva can diminish friendly bacteria in the mouth. that's a very simple. I mean, if you're not scraping your tongue, just get a tongue scraper. It should
Yes.
be stainless steel or silver. Don't use the plastic ones. Don't brush your tongue. Some people start brushing their tongue and they kind of push the bad stuff more deeply inside. So don't brush it, scrape it. You'll feel such a big difference just in the way you feel your mouth and your breath and everything else. Very simple, inexpensive practice. Takes a few seconds.
Yes, that's a great one. Okay, let's move to diet, and we could talk about eating routines also with when we're talking about diet, because this is your specialty as well. What are some foods and spices that really support and strengthen immunity? Would you say, Divya?
Well, most spices help to strengthen immunity because they help to strengthen the digestion and Agni. But there's a few ones that are particular like heroes, the turmeric, ginger, and one spice that's less known, but I always have with me and I always carry it with me for emergency situations is ajwain, Ajwain, ajwain. It's also called carom seeds. And ajwain is a very hot spice. It's really pungent, but it's also scientifically proven it can kill so many types of bacteria, and it's really like it has powerful defense properties.
Hmm.
It's also great for food poisoning and many other issues. So for example, I have a guest right now, and she arrived in the evening, and in the morning she tested positive for COVID.
Oh boy.
So, and I'm like, don't worry, you're at the right place. I'll take care of you. So the first thing I started doing is ajwain water. I cook everything. I add ajwain to everything I make for him. Tea, broths, like things like that. And today is day 3 of her illness, and I opened the door today, and she was doing yoga. She looks so much better. She almost all her symptoms disappeared. So ajwain is a really good spice. If you don't have it, you can get it from an Indian store. There are many online stores that sell it. But I always travel with it as well because it has a very quick. So let's say you ate something, it really helps improve digestion. Like if you ate something and you feel that it's still sitting in your stomach and you kind of almost feel nauseous, it's like ah. And if you feel that way, just chewing on a few ajwain seeds within minutes, it will dissipate this because it helps to transform that semi digestive sludge and move it out of the body. Just keep in mind that it's a very hot spice, and if you tend to be a fiery person, only use it as medicine, don't use it every day because it will overheat you.
Right. And how do you use it as a tonic, as with ajwain water for immunity?
Yeah, so for example, when I have a lot of healing recipes up my sleeves, when somebody's sick, they usually call me. It's like, what should I do?
Hmm.
Especially, common illness like flu, like simple
Sure.
things. Um, so I recommend not to drink just cold water, room temperature water. I actually recommend to boil the water and to add a pinch of ajwain to the water. And the ajwain will help increase Agni because when you're very sick, when you have fever, your Agni goes down very much. That's why you don't have appetite. And that's why sometimes you feel like throwing up. So the ajwain helps to cut through that, and it helps to increase your Agni as well. So instead of just drinking plain water, I would make ajwain water, like 4 cups of like a quart of water with a pinch of ajwain. Boil it for a minute, and then I strain it and put it in a thermos. And I have I don't want to say patient because I'm not a doctor, but whoever I'm taking care of, I would just have them sip on that water throughout the day.
Okay. That's a great tip. Yeah, when you were saying ajwain seeds, I can actually very distinctly remember my grandparents and even my mom in a little tin that would sit in her bag. She would always have some ajwain seeds. And if, somebody wasn't feeling too good or had an upset stomach, it would either be, a combination of either you would have fennel to help with it. If that didn't work, then maybe you'd have ajwain, just depending on how you were feeling and
Yeah.
what time of the year it was and all of that kind of stuff. But it's funny when I hear these things, I have these distinct memories from childhood of seeing my elders carrying these little dubbas, as we call them, or little tins
But yeah.
with these different remedies.
Yeah. And they would rarely tell you why they're doing. They'll just take, just take.
Exactly. Just take a little bit, and they just put a couple seeds into your palm and say, just eat it. So it's funny. Okay, so ajwain is one of the spices that can support immunity. Turmeric, you said already, which you can add to so many different recipes. Again, you can take it as a pill form if that's something you need for inflammation, but it also helps with immunity. What are some other?
Ginger is fantastic because ginger is antiviral and antibacterial. It increases Agni. It helps you digest your food. It also clears sludge. It really regulates bowel movement. If you're constipated, ginger tea every day will really help you. It also dries phlegm. It takes mucus out. But at the same time, so it does a lot of the things that garlic does, for example, but it doesn't deplete the friendly bacteria because garlic is very powerful for immunity. But for especially for people who have a lot of heat and acidity, like the pitta, high pitta, or if you have a chronic inflammation, you definitely have a lot of acidity there as well. So garlic can be contraindicated for severe inflammation, especially gut inflammation. But ginger can take care of all that without depleting the friendly bacteria or causing an inflammatory response. So that's why I love ginger. I use dry ginger, especially when there is a lot of phlegm, or fresh ginger. It's good for everybody.
I think one of my favorite things that I had at your restaurant was your ginger tea. It's so good. Oh my God, it's so good. Can you tell the listeners, sort of a recipe for ginger tea? Because I do think that this is one, because it is not so heating and because it's has so many different medicinal properties that are so helpful, especially in the colder months and to boost immunity and strengthen digestion. I feel like it's something that you can have every day, just preventatively as well.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you don't feel overheated, if you're not getting hot flashes or just feel very hot in general, then definitely it will be very helpful in this during these months. There are many different variations of ginger tea, so I'll tell you how we make it at Divya's Kitchen, and the recipe is also in my first cookbook, "What to Eat for How You Feel." And also, just keep in mind that you can make the ginger tea at different strengths. So you can make it very spicy, very pungent, very strong, or you can make it less so. So, especially if you tend to feel overheated, then you can make it more mild. Um, so, what I usually do, let's say for 2 cups of water, 16 ounces, I would use for medium strength. We talk about the balance.
Yeah, sure.
For medium strength, I would use, let's say, 1.5 tablespoons of freshly grated ginger. And for try to find organic ginger if possible, because the non-organic, a lot of it comes from China and they put all kinds of chemicals because ginger gets moldy very quickly. So it goes bad quickly, and the non-organic especially, they can use chemicals to preserve it longer. So if you can find organic, and when I make tea, I don't even peel the ginger. I just wash it really well and I grate it with the peel because we're gonna strain it afterwards. So 1.5 tablespoons for 2 cups. So bring 2 cups of water to a boil and add the ginger, the freshly grated ginger, and just simmer. You can simmer it uncovered for 5 minutes for medium strength. If you want to make it really strong, simmer it for 10 minutes and it will reduce a little bit. And then you just strain it and wait for it to cool down to sipping temperature. And then you can add some fresh lime juice to it. And then you can stir in like a teaspoon of honey. So we always add the lime juice and especially the honey when the tea cools down to sipping temperature, because putting honey in boiling hot liquid will make it more toxic. And that's a whole other
A whole nother,
discussion to have about honey and
yep.
how to use honey properly. But just for now, remember not to put honey in very boiling hot water, food, whatever. So when you cool it down to sipping temperature so you don't burn your tongue, then you can add the honey and some lime juice. It becomes delicious. I like to sweeten it a little bit because, like for me, I have a very vata body, very airy. And I notice that every time I drink ginger tea without a sweetener, I start hiccuping right away. It somehow produces some kind of imbalance. But if I have it slightly sweetened, then no reaction. So it creates the sweetener, in this case the honey, balances the pungency and the sourness of.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I have very much of a kapha and pitta disposition. And so for me, I actually enjoy having ginger tea without any sweetener.
Yeah, and you're fine, right? You're fine
Yeah, and
with
I'm
it.
fine. I have it just the ginger and the lime, or even sometimes just plain ginger if I don't have any lime around. But I usually don't put honey. It's only when I'm at your restaurant or if somebody else has made it for me that I'll have it that way. So again, the ginger is the most important thing that's in that
Yeah.
tea from an immunity perspective.
Yeah, and you can make variations. You can add a few mint leaves if you like. The coolness of the mint will balance the pungency of the ginger. You can add some cardamom pods, like 2 cardamom pods. The cardamom is also a little cooling and it will create a slightly different flavor. Very pleasant again. And cardamom also is very good for driving phlegm out of the lungs and reducing cough. So there are variations. You can put fennel seeds in it. In my new cookbook, Joy of Balance, I have a tea recipe that I called Immune Boost Tea. And on top of the ginger, I add 2 pinches of ajwain seeds, a teaspoon of, that's for 4 cups, not 2 cups. So 3 tablespoons of ginger, 1 teaspoon of fennel seeds, 4 cardamom pods, and quarter teaspoon of ajwain. So that's the recipe for the immune boost tea. It's so delicious. So it works. The fennel is very good with not just digestion, but also cough, phlegm. It supports the lungs also, not just the stomach. So they kind of work synergistically. And it really, I was making this tea for my friend who is visiting us right now, and it really helped her. I mean, she perked up like within an hour after drinking it.
Yeah. I love talking to you, Divya, because you always remind me the power of spices and how medicinal that they are, that, spices are medicine. Because when you describe, and I'm taking your culinary training, when you describe how these different spices work together and the joy that you have and sort of the wonder and awe you have, it just reminds me of how incredibly powerful they are. And it's such a simple thing. I mean, you just have these spices in your kitchen and you start adding them to make this synergistic medicine for yourself that can really help you. It may not cure anything, but it's definitely going to help boost your immunity, boost your digestion, and help you get better and feel better, right?
Yeah.
And it's all connected.
And it's delicious.
It is. It is. It's amazing. It tastes so good. And, sometimes for somebody who has more of a Western palate, it takes a little getting used to. Me being South Asian growing up with this, I find all of these combinations delicious. There are very few things that I don't like, bitter melon, karela, that's a taste you have to develop. But, most things I really enjoy. Again, I have that history of growing up with these flavors. So sometimes it can be an adjustment, but
Yeah.
they're delicious and they really just help so much. Are there any other spices that you would say, you talked about ajwain, turmeric, ginger?
Well, actually, I wanted to mention a classic, very famous Ayurvedic formula, herbal remedy that's really an amazing immune booster, and it's Triphala. So Triphala, actually, there are all these studies nowadays that show how Triphala is an immunomodulator, right? It helps your immune system not go in not be overly stimulated or overly suppressed. So it really regulates the immune response for a balanced immune system. So Triphala is a remedy made from 3 different fruits, medicinal fruits, bibitaki, haritaki, and amalaki, or amla, the famous amla. So I love the Triphala because it has so many functions in the body. So some people think that it supports healthy bowel function, which it does, because it's able to thin the bile, first of all. So it's a cholagogue, right? These are the foods that help to thin the bile and make it move properly. And the bile is one of the dumpsters in the body. So if it's too thick, if it's not moving properly, it can lower digestion and then lower immune system. It definitely supports healthy bowel function, but it's not addictive. It's not habit forming. It scrapes that sludge that we were talking about, the in the intestinal lining. It can actually beautifully scrape that off, and it regulates your bowel movement. So Triphala comes in powder, and it has a really nasty taste. So people put it in capsules and make tablets so you don't have to taste it in your mouth so much, which some Ayurvedic doctors are against. They say you should be able to taste your medicine, so just mix it with water. But some people really, they just they have a negative emotion, so it means it will not work for them. And I have to, I mean, I don't know if I can recommend the best trifle that I've experienced so far is by this brand called 108 Health. So it's I know the people who make it. They're my friends Yogi Cameron and his wife Jaima, and it's liposomal triphala. It's the first liposomal triphala, and you just spray like 8 to 10 pumps under your tongue for 20 seconds, and it works like magic. I I travel because it helps. It does everything that trifala does, but it doesn't go through your digestive system, and it acts 6 times more powerfully and more effectively, I should say. So check it out, 108 Health, because I've been looking for really good trifala that will not cause any other. Sometimes you may feel it's for some people it doesn't work as well. But the liposomal trifilo works amazing, and you can get it on Amazon also. But but trifilo is just it works on so many different levels, and trifilo is also known to be one of those special herbal formulas that are good for almost everybody, almost all the time. So, with most herbs, we shouldn't use them all the time. We should take breaks and use them whenever we need them. But trifilo is something that we can use regularly.
Yeah. Triphala is a pretty powerful Ayurvedic remedy. And, again, this is something that you should be careful about taking anything without having proper guidance. So I would say to the listeners, we're talking about these different formulations and different combinations. Something like Triphala can be powerful, right? And again, it's good for everyone, all seasons. Again, work with an Ayurvedic practitioner to make sure that you are taking it appropriately in the appropriate dose at the appropriate time for you of day. Those are all things that matter because, again, as we said, these different spices and foods and formulations are very powerful, and you want to make sure that you're taking them appropriately. So that would be the only thing I would, caution the listeners to think about.
No, no, thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I take Triphala every day, and I find that it is a very, very helpful remedy for all of the reasons that you have stated. And so I really believe that it helps me a lot too. So from a personal
Mm.
perspective. So you've got two people who are Ayurvedic practitioners who take it themselves. So take that for whatever you want, however you want to take that. Okay, let's talk about some foods, maybe some recipes that you find are really helpful to have during the winter months, maybe to help with boosting immunity. Is there anything specific that you might suggest?
Yeah, so in the winter we need, because there's more extra dryness in the body. Um and it's not just from the environment, right? The winds and all that, but also the radiators indoors, right? It just dries. It really dries our body more. So adding extra fat to our diet is very important, especially ghee, like especially the cultured ghee, which is the best. You can find that at divyas.com. We produce our own amazing cultured ghee. We churn the butter. I mean, it's a whole process. But also high quality olive oil. These will be two. I would say these will be the two best oils for the winter. Some people like to use coconut oil, but because coconut oil is very cooling, I don't recommend it in the cold season. You could cook with it more in the summer, in the hot season, but not in the cold season. So if you cook regularly with ghee and coconut oil, it kind of oilates you on the inside, and it supports the proper function of the different membranes, mucous membranes in the body. It's great. And also ghee, cultured ghee is one of the best prebiotic foods on the planet. So it feeds the friendly bacteria on top of doing many other things.
Okay. So making sure that you're adding good fats in this way to your diet is really important as well.
Yes. And we also
Okay.
need more protein. But when I say a little more protein, we just need heavier foods. So make sure that you're eating like stews and soups and even baked goods, but don't have these light salads that are cold and really dry, because they will only create more imbalance. But when I say protein, protein is heavier to digest in general. But then I mean easy to digest protein. So not just how many grams of protein you're taking from your protein shake, but actually, are you able to digest that protein? So from cooked lentils, from soaked nuts, from whole grains, I use good dairy in my diet, so I get protein from fresh paneer cheese or milk or yogurt. This will satiate us, and it will regulate also our Agni during the winter.
Yeah, and this comes back to that idea of the golden principle. Like increases, like opposites reduce. And so in the winter, when it's colder outside, we have a lot more, it's the vata season, right? More air and space. The qualities are light, mobile, cool. We want to do
Mm.
some of the opposites. So the foods that we're eating should have a little bit more warmth, a little bit more heaviness, a little bit more stability to counterbalance the season that we're in. And again, that imbalance, if we create too much imbalance through the foods that we're eating that would increase vata, right? These,
Hmm.
cold raw salads would increase that, because like increases like, that then causes us to have less harmony in our bodies, affects our digestion, affects our immunity. So again, it's all connected,
Yeah.
which is, I think, what you were getting at. And also, for the listeners, I will make sure that both of Divya's cookbooks and her products, everything will be linked in the show notes. So anything that she's been mentioning, whether it's looking up recipes, you can go to her website, you can go to her books, because I know that we've been talking through the recipes and you may not have scribbled them down, but you can get them through some of the resources that we'll have in the show notes for you.
Yeah. And we also released my master classes, which are 8.5 hours of broken down systematic uh, teaching that I do on the basics of Ayurvedic cooking. And I show how to make a lot of these recipes, how to use the spices. We speak more about the connection between diet and immunity, and how to cook seasonally. So the classes and the books will also really help you integrate these concepts and teachings into your own life at your own pace.
Yes, at your own pace. That's the most important thing, because it can become a little overwhelming. We're talking about how everything connects, and you all might be thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can't keep this all straight." But it does really connect, and it's about that repetition in different ways. Okay, so Divya, let's move on to some ideas for food combining, because I know that you have so much knowledge here, and food combining can be a little bit of a tricky thing to understand, but it's really important in Ayurveda from a perspective of eating and the diet. So, do you have any food combining tips for really strengthening or supporting immunity? Let's start there.
Sure. So a lot of people get congested not because they're sick, but because they eat incompatible foods. It's just like a body reaction. It creates more phlegm because the incompatible foods are very hard to fully digest. And then one of the reactions is congestion. So, like sinus infection is very common, a very common result of improper food combining. So, one of the one of the very common ones in the West is eating dairy with fruit, like fresh raw fruit. Like so for example,
Like yogurt and fruit,
yeah, yogurt
right?
and fruit. I mean, that's like a standard American breakfast or European also.
Right.
And I have to tell you, when I was younger, I would have just yogurt fruit salad, especially in the summer, every morning. That was the thing. But but they're just yogurt is so heavy to digest, and fruit digests differently than yogurt. So when you eat them together, the body kind of becomes confused. Oh, which one should I have first? Then it doesn't fully break down both. So congestion is very common. So I would really suggest like look at in my books I have food compatibility tables that makes it like at a glance you can see what to eat, what not to eat in terms of combinations. There's so much information online also. So really, if you want to improve your digestion, which will lead to better immunity, is just learn a little bit more about proper food combinations. So yeah, also Greek yogurt, very difficult to digest. And when you mix that with fruit, it becomes even more difficult. That is not just milk, not just yogurt, also milk. So milk and strawberries, so heavy cream and strawberries, or any kind of pie that has sour fruit in it with heavy cream on top, or ice cream with dairy ice cream with fruit in it. So all these create a lot of confusion in the body, and that confusion leads to lower immunity.
Right. And so I think maybe what you're trying to say is that the basic idea behind food combining is how does your body receive it and digest it? Right. And that you want to pair things together that are going to be received by the body sort of almost like together
Yeah.
more, and that they can handle both of those things together well.
Yes.
That's really what food combining is about. Right.
Yes.
And the idea there that we talked about before is that when you put food into the body, you take in food, each of the tissues in line will be nourished by that food. And the end product of that is the vitality, the ojas, which amounts to immunity in Ayurveda. And so if you are putting food in which is not compatible to each other, then you don't have that digestion process to create vitality, immunity, et cetera. So again, it kind of all
It's all connected. Yes.
yes, exactly, exactly. And so that's really, I think it's so important. You know, I really try on this podcast to explain sort of the logical reasoning because I think it makes it much more easy than to implement because, you know, again, we can sit here, you and I, and talk about the fact that you should not combine dairy with fruit, like yogurt and fruit. And if it's something that someone really likes, that's going to be a hard thing to give up. But if you understand the reasoning why, then it might be a little bit easier to move in that direction of starting to change that combination or that habit.
Yes, exactly. It's important to know why we recommend what we recommend. But also, I always encourage people like just try it. Okay, try avoiding dairy and yogurt for a couple of weeks and see if you feel better, see if you feel different. And if you do, then here is the sign. It's like, yeah, it's working. So very often when I teach the food compatibility class, I used to teach them in person before COVID. And when I explain this, and many people would have like aha moments, they would be like, "Oh wow, that's why I'm having this chronic congestion. That's why I'm having this allergic reaction." Or whatever it may be, and they will come back like a couple of weeks later to the next class, and they would say, I feel so much better because I started avoiding those food combinations that are very difficult for the body to handle, very difficult to digest. And I'm like, yay, it's
Mhm.
working.
Right, right. That's great. No, I think these are all great ideas, but that's one that, we both commonly see is this dairy and fruit thing. And many people will start their day off with that. And so then that leads to them not feeling well the entire day. So it's sort of like this difficult way to start the day in the sense of it just sets you up to not feel well
Yes.
because you're not digesting well.
Yeah. There are other
Yeah.
options.
Exactly, exactly. Is there another food combining tip that you often find that people are maybe doing a wrong combination or incompatible foods that's really common that maybe we could give a tip to the listeners?
Yes. So, I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat meat, but meat or fish, especially fish with yogurt, like there's a common dish, fish with yogurt sauce. That's a really bad combination. So this can create soft blood clots. That's
Hmm.
dangerous, you know. On top of congestion, congestion is just the lighter type of reaction, but uh, foods that are really difficult to digest together, they can congest calcification in the body. They can create blood clots and many other things. So definitely, that's the kosher principle, right? Don't mix meat and dairy, and then you will be on the safer side. One thing that people do very often is milk or heavy cream with salt. So these and I don't mean cheese, I don't mean yogurt, just milk or heavy cream with salt, like in a bechamel sauce, or if you're making creamy vegetable soup and you're adding some heavy cream to it, and then you season it with salt. So the salt and the milk or heavy cream it really lower immunity, and it also lower. Usually, it comes up. The reaction that comes up from this combination is usually on your skin. So any kind of breakouts, I've seen so many different types of breakouts due to this combination. Or you're drinking chai, which is predominantly the liquid in the chai is predominantly dairy milk, and then you're eating something salty on the side. So that will create also incompatible. And I've seen really serious skin conditions from just people drinking chai and chai with milk and eating something salty at the same time.
Yeah. I will raise my hand and say I am totally guilty of doing that. It's one of my favorite things to do. I don't do it very often, but I will have to take more notice of how I feel when I do that.
Yeah,
So,
and that's one reason why at Divya's Kitchen at our restaurant, we serve our chai with plant-based milk. So it's either almond milk or oat milk, you can choose. But the main
mhm.
reason I don't use dairy milk is because I know that people will be ordering other things and I don't want them to mix it with the dairy.
Ah. So that might be why I haven't had that reaction because I don't drink dairy milk. I make chai with plant-based
Yeah,
milks.
no, plant-based, totally
Aha.
fine. So
That's
so that's the other thing is you just replace the dairy milk with plant-based milk and then it's compatible
mhm.
with most foods.
Okay. I know another question that's probably going through most people's minds, and so let's just answer this. So then is it okay to have dairy at all if you want to strengthen your immunity or fruits if you're having them separately?
Yes, yes, definitely. So the quality of the dairy is very important. That could be another whole podcast.
Of
There's
course.
so many contradictory opinions about dairy. So as long as you have good quality A2 milk from happy grass-fed cows that are grazing in the fields, like the good quality, that's it could be pasteurized, but maybe not homogenized. Like if you choose your dairy very carefully and you eat it in the right way. So in my first book, What to Eat for How You Feel, I explain the proper consumption of dairy because you could have the right dairy, but if you keep drinking very cold milk out of the fridge, it's very heavy. You'll get it congested. It's not compatible to that way. Um, or even eating very, very cold yogurt. So I always say, like, take the yogurt out, let it sit for half an hour, then eat it. So yeah, so there, but as long as you have the good dairy, that's fine.
Okay. And can you have an alternate yogurt with fruits?
Yes, yes, that's fine. Because see, alternate yogurts are usually made from nuts. And
Correct.
nuts and fruits are listed in the same category in Ayurveda. So nuts are considered the fruits of a tree. They're also fruits of a tree. So they're considered in the same category as fruits.
Hmm. Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So there you go. Okay. So let's move on to the last part of the optimal health pyramid, which is the tools of yoga. And what are some things that we can do to strengthen our immunity using some of these tools, things like movement, meditation, breath? Are there any things that you have found really helpful for boosting immunity?
I mean, definitely, yes, meditation. Meditation usually helps the mind the most. And that's very important. We spoke about that. And then breath is extremely important. So there's certain breaths that help, especially like the brahmari, the when you close your nose and your ears and you hum. So you have to do it properly, but that's actually that's recommended for boosting immunity. There's scientific studies behind it. I'm sure you can pull those studies. Avanti,
Yeah.
you're a scientist. And breath is so important because it's not only it doesn't only charge us with oxygen, it also is very cleansing. And it's very calming, it's very grounding. It helps you to center yourself. And my favorite thing is just being out in nature, walking barefoot on clean ground and spending time with the trees, and or being out on the beach, being out in the sun. I mean, the sun is one of the most powerful immune boosting energies. And many people, especially in the winter, immunity can go down because we're mostly indoors. We're not so much out in the sun if it's cold outside. But spending every morning before by 10 o'clock just being out in the sun can be extremely boosting for the immunity.
Absolutely. The practice of, viewing the sun, it's morning, it's called morning sun viewing, or morning light viewing as soon as you wake up is really sort of the way to think about it.
Mm.
So, as close to waking up, getting outside and viewing the sun for anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, depends on how overcast it is. But that really is a very, very powerful immune booster, mostly because it affects your hormones, which then are connected to your immunity. So that's a really powerful practice.
Even my Vedic astrologer, like he would say, because the sun in Vedic astrology and even in Western astrology, the sun is directly related to our immunity. He would tell me, just go out in the sun.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
another thing that I do, I don't know, I guess it's not food, but it's not really a lifestyle. But it's an Ayurvedic practice is to drink gold water. So that would be my last recommendation. And what I do is ideally would have like a pure 24 karat gold cup, but that's really expensive. And this was available to the kings in the past, but maybe not today. But what I do is I have these little 1 gram gold biscuit. I have like a pure gold 24 karat gold biscuit. And then I boil my water with it, the drinking water. I boil it for a minute with that gold in it. And then I pour it uh, in like a thermos or like a water pitcher. That's my water for the day. And the gold stays inside. And the nanoparticles of the gold really help to strengthen immunity. This has been used long time in Ayurveda. It's also there in Vedic astrology. And I remember even in dentistry, the best filling that will actually strengthen your immunity would be gold fillings. But very few people do them nowadays. They just use plastic or mercury, which is not so good. But yes, that drinking cold water can be very helpful to boost immunity. I do it every day, especially in the winter.
Yeah, amazing. That's a good tip, and it has been done for a very long time in Ayurveda. So it's again a practice that is part of human experience through Ayurveda, and what the ancients have taught us and passed down
Yeah.
as something to strengthen immunity. And so, really, the couple of things we talked about with tools of yoga, meditation is always going to really help calm your mind, strengthen your immunity. It strengthens your health in every way. And then this morning sun viewing, morning light viewing, which is a really important concept. And then some breath work. And again, you can do the Brahmari, the bee humming breath. That is great for immunity, but also just learning to use your breath, right? Focusing on the inhale versus the exhale, right? I've talked about this on this podcast many times. The inhale is exciting, invigorating. The exhale is calming and relaxing. And so to calm your mind, to really boost your immunity, to take you out of that stress response so that your immunity can work better, you want to focus on your exhale and start to relax and lengthen your exhale a little bit longer than your inhale. Right there, that's breath work. You don't have to do anything fancy. You don't have to look anything up on the internet. It's just breathing in that way, making your exhale a little bit longer than your inhale, doing that for a few rounds, and you will feel a shift in how you feel because physiologically, our respiration and our nervous system are connected. And so, right there, it's a very, very powerful tool. So, I think that we have shared so much on this episode. I know this is a very long episode with so many ideas of how to really boost your immunity from an Ayurvedic perspective, and really this conversation about what immunity is from an Ayurvedic perspective. I hope that, all of you listening have gotten a lot of value out of this. Divya, thank you so much for all of the wisdom that you've shared on this episode. I'm going to go back and listen and take notes as well, because I've learned a few things from you that I didn't know, didn't remember, and maybe did as a kid, but didn't really register why. And thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom, Divya. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Avanti, thank you for having me. And thank you for sharing your wisdom. I feel like I'm going to do some breath work right after this.
I'll probably be doing that with you as well. And, I wanted to let the listeners know that Divya has so kindly agreed to, be a regular guest on the podcast so that we can do these Ayurvedic deep dives together on different topics. And so I think that we'll try and be back again in March for another deep dive, a Let's Go Deeper sort of series on another Ayurvedic topic. So I'll look forward to talking to you again, Divya. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks again for listening to The Healing Catalyst. If you love what you heard, please hit follow and pass it along to a friend. And if you're feeling really inspired, please rate and review so that others can find this podcast more easily. To learn more, head to avantikumarsingh.com. And to connect with me directly, find me on Instagram at avantikumarsingh. I'll be back next week and hope that you will be too. Until then, remember, with the right catalyst, you have the power to activate your own healing, because healing starts within.